Ambassador Helen Carter sat in the cold metal chair and looked around the huge room. The Galactic Council chamber was bigger than any building on Earth. Thousands of alien creatures filled the seats that went up and up like a giant bowl. Their eyes all watched her, and most of them did not look friendly. Helen had been Earth's voice in this place for 3 years now. She knew these aliens well enough to read their faces, even the weird ones with too many eyes or no eyes at all. Today was different. Today they all looked scared. The hegemony had called this meeting. Helen did not like the hegemony. They were the oldest and strongest group in the galaxy. They had ruled over other planets for thousands of years. Most aliens bowed when the hegemony spoke. Most aliens did what they were told without asking questions. Humans were still new here. Earth had only joined the Galactic Council 50 years ago. That was like yesterday to these old alien races. Some of them had been traveling between stars since before humans learned to make fire. High Counselor Zethka stood up on the center platform. He was tall and thin with blue skin that seemed to glow. His forearms moved as he talked, and his voice filled the room without any machine to make it louder. "Today we bring great news," Zethka said. His words came out slow and careful. "The hegemony has decided to gift the galaxy with perfect peace. No more wars, no more fighting, no more death." Helen felt her stomach twist. When powerful people talked about giving gifts, it usually meant they wanted to take something away. "We call this the Compliance Directive," Zethka continued. "All worlds will give their weapons to the hegemony. All armies will be disbanded. The hegemony will protect everyone. The hegemony will keep the peace." The room went quiet. Helen could hear her own heart beating. She pressed a small button on her chair. Back on Earth, Admiral Jake Peterson and his team would be listening to every word. "This is not a request," Zethka said. The words hit the room like a hammer. "This is the new law of the galaxy. All worlds will comply within 100 standard days." One by one, alien representatives stood up. The Zephyrians said yes first. Their bug-like leader clicked and buzzed his agreement. The Altarians followed, their crystal bodies flashing as they bowed. 12 more species agreed, then 15, then 20. Helen watched them all give up their freedom without a fight. She thought about Earth. She thought about the billions of humans who had never bowed to anyone. She thought about her grandfather who had fought in 3 wars to keep his country free. "Ambassador Carter of Earth," Zethka called out. "Your world will comply?" Helen stood up slowly. The entire chamber watched her. She could feel their eyes, like weight on her shoulders. Some aliens leaned forward to hear better. Others whispered to each other in languages that sounded like music or static or breaking glass. She thought about the message Admiral Peterson had sent her before this meeting. "Tell them what humans have always told bullies," he had said. "Tell them what our ancestors told kings who demanded too much. Tell them what free people always tell tyrants." Helen took a deep breath. Her voice carried clearly through the chamber. "No, the..." Single word hit the room like an explosion. Aliens jumped in their seats. Some made sounds she had never heard before. Others started talking all at once in dozens of different languages. Zethka's blue face got darker. His 4 arms spread wide. "You refuse the compliance directive?" "Yes," Helen said. "Earth refuses. Humans refuse. We will not give up our weapons. We will not give up our armies. We will not give up our freedom." "Your world is small," Zethka said. His voice got colder with each word. "Your people are young. You have been in space for less than 200 years. You think you can stand against the hegemony?" Helen smiled. It was not a happy smile. It was the kind of smile her grandfather used to make before a fight. "We've stood against worse odds before," she said. "We've fought bigger enemies than you, and we've never learned how to surrender." The chamber erupted in noise. Aliens were shouting and clicking and making sounds that had no names. Some looked excited, others looked terrified. The hegemony representatives sat still as stone, but Helen could see anger in their strange eyes. Zethka raised all 4 arms and the noise stopped. "Earth has chosen poorly," he said. "The compliance directive is not optional. Those who refuse will face consequences." What kind of consequences? Helen asked. The kind that make examples of the foolish, Sethka replied. The hegemony has maintained peace for 3,000 years. We will not let one small world destroy that peace. Helen gathered her papers and stood up straight. Then you'd better bring everything you have, she said, because humans don't scare easy and we sure don't know how to quit. She walked out of the chamber while thousands of aliens watched in silence. Her footsteps echoed off the metal walls. Behind her, she could hear the whispers starting again, but louder now. Outside the chamber, Helen's assistant Tom Bradley was waiting by their transport ship. His face was pale, and his hands shook a little. Ma'am, he said, long-range sensors are picking up fleet movements in 3 sectors, big fleets, all heading toward Earth space. Helen nodded and climbed into the ship. Send a message to Admiral Peterson, she said. Tell him we said no, just like he wanted. Tell him they didn't take it well. What else should I tell him? Tom asked. Helen strapped herself into her seat as the ship lifted off from the station. Through the window, she could see the lights of 1,000 alien ships docked around the massive council station. Soon, many of those ships would be pointed at Earth. Tell him to get ready, she said. Tell him they're coming, and they're bringing friends. As their ship jumped to hyperspace, Helen thought about home. Earth would have maybe 3 days to prepare for war against the most powerful force in the galaxy. Most people would call that impossible odds. Helen called it Tuesday. Admiral Jake Peterson stood in the war room deep under Colorado. The screens around him showed red dots moving across star maps. Each red dot was a hegemony ship heading toward Earth. There were a lot of red dots. How long do we have? He asked. Captain Roy Bennett pointed to the biggest screen. 72 hours until they reach our outer defense grid. Maybe less if they push their engines hard. Jake nodded. 72 hours to prepare for a war against an enemy that had never lost a fight. Most military leaders would spend that time writing surrender letters. Jake was not most military leaders. Get me General Sam Hughes, he said. The call connected instantly. Sam's weathered face appeared on the screen. Behind him, Jake could see the busy halls of Earth Defense Command. Jake, Sam said, I've been watching the fleet movements. We're looking at 3,000 ships, maybe more. I know, Jake said. How are our people holding up? Sam smiled, but it was a tired smile. You know humans, Jake. Half of them are scared out of their minds. The other half are excited for a fight. Both halves are asking what they can do to help. Jake had expected that humans were strange that way. When things got really bad, they got stubborn instead of scared. What about our special projects? Jake asked. Commander Kate Williams is activating the resistance cells now. Dr. Alex Turner says his weapons are ready for field testing. Captain, Maya Rodriguez is already out there gathering intelligence. Jake felt a little better. These were not regular military people. These were the humans who had spent years preparing for a war that everyone said would never come. Kate Williams sat in a coffee shop on New Geneva Colony. She looked like a normal businesswoman reading news on her tablet. Nobody would guess she was one of Earth's most dangerous soldiers. Her tablet beeped with a coded message. The message looked like an advertisement for vacation trips, but Kate knew how to read between the lines. The war had started. Kate finished her coffee and walked outside. She pressed 3 buttons on her phone in a special order. All across the colony, other humans got the same signal. The baker, the school teacher, the repair technician, the librarian. Normal people living normal lives. Normal people who had been quietly preparing for this day. Within an hour, every important building on New Geneva had humans watching it. The communication center, the power plant, the spaceport, the government, offices. If the hegemony wanted to take control of this world, they would have to fight for every street. Kate smiled as she walked. The hegemony thought humans only lived on Earth and a few big colonies. They had no idea how many humans were scattered across the galaxy, just living their lives and waiting for orders. Dr. Alex Turner ran through the underground tunnels beneath Luna Base. His team had been working in secret for 5 years, building weapons the galaxy had never seen before. Show me the kinetic bombardment system, he told his assistant, Dr. Susan Clark. Susan led him to a massive chamber filled with metal rods. Each rod was 10 feet long and made of tungsten. They looked simple, but Alex knew they were the most dangerous weapons in human space. The orbital platforms are ready, Susan said. We can drop these on target from any angle. The hegemony shields won't stop them. Alex nodded. Other species used energy weapons because they looked impressive. Humans used whatever worked. A piece of metal moving fast enough could destroy anything. What about the biological weapons? Alex asked. Susan's face got serious. Ready, but I hope we don't have to use them. We've never tested anything like this before. Alex understood. The biological weapons were designed to attack each hegemony species differently. They would not kill, but they would make fighting very difficult. It was the kind of warfare that would shock the galaxy. Keep them ready, Alex said. If they want to play rough, we'll show them what rough really means. Captain Maya Rodriguez floated in space in her tiny scout ship. Her engines were off, and her ship looked like just another piece of space junk. But Maya was watching the hegemony, fleet with sensors they could not detect. She had been studying alien ships for 10 years. She knew their designs, their weapons, their weak points. What she saw now made her excited and worried at the same time. The hegemony ships were huge and powerful, but they were old designs. Their formations were perfect for intimidating planets into surrender. They were terrible for actual fighting. These people haven't fought a real war in centuries, Maya whispered to herself. She recorded everything and sent the data back to Earth using a communication method the aliens had never seen. Human ships were small and quiet compared to alien vessels, but they were fast and smart. Maya counted weapon systems and shield generators. She measured engine output and armor thickness. Most importantly, she watched how the alien crews behaved. They moved like people who expected easy victories. They flew in straight lines and kept their ships close together. They followed old rules and old patterns. Maya had studied human military history. She knew what happened when old armies met new tactics. It usually did not go well for the old armies. Back on Earth, Jake Peterson gathered his commanders in the war room. The screens now showed the complete picture. 3,000 enemy ships were coming, and Earth had maybe 200 ships to meet them. Gentlemen and ladies, Jake said, the enemy has us outnumbered 15-1. They have bigger ships, more powerful weapons, and thousands of years of experience. His commanders looked at him. Some were scared, some were excited, but all of them were ready. They also have no idea who they're fighting, Jake continued. They think we'll line up our ships and trade shots like gentlemen. They think we'll follow their rules and fight their kind of war. Jake smiled, and it was not a nice smile. They're about to learn that humans don't fight fair. We fight to win. The room erupted in grins and nods. Outside, the red dots on the screens kept getting closer to Earth. But inside that room, humanity's greatest warriors were planning the biggest surprise in galactic history. The countdown had begun. Lieutenant Emma Parker sat in her fighter cockpit and watched the hegemony fleet spread across space like a metal storm cloud. 3,000 ships hung in the darkness beyond Neptune's orbit. Each ship was 10 times bigger than her tiny fighter. Emma was not scared. She was excited. Dragon Squadron, this is Dragon 1, she said into her radio. Remember what we practiced. Fast and dirty. Hit them hard and get out before they know what happened. 23 other fighters responded. 24 human pilots in small ships going up against the biggest fleet in galactic history. Emma's grandmother would have called it suicide. Emma called it Tuesday. The hegemony ships moved in perfect formation. Their hulls gleamed with energy shields that could stop any weapon the galaxy had ever built. Their commanders probably felt very safe behind all that protection. They had never fought humans before. Dragon Squadron, arm nuclear warheads, Emma ordered. Nuclear weapons were illegal in galactic warfare. They were considered crude and barbaric. No civilized species used them anymore. The hegemony had banned them 300 years ago. Humans had never signed that treaty. Emma's fighter carried 6 nuclear missiles, each one small enough to hide inside a cargo container. The hegemony sensors were looking for big energy signatures and plasma charges. They were not looking for simple atomic bombs. Dragon 1 to all units, Emma said. Begin attack run. 24 fighters accelerated toward the alien fleet. They were too small and fast for the big alien guns to track easily. The hegemony ships tried to target them, but their weapons were designed for ship-to-ship combat, not swarm attacks. Emma picked her target, a massive battleship in the center of the formation. She flew straight at it, dodging plasma bolts that lit up space around her. At the last second, she released her missiles and pulled hard to the right. 6 nuclear explosions bloomed against the battleship's shields. The energy barriers flickered and died. The ship's hull cracked open like an egg. All around the fleet, other human fighters were doing the same thing. Small, fast attacks that the aliens could not stop. Nuclear fire spread across their perfect formation. Commander Rick Stone watched the fighter attack from his hiding place in the asteroid belt. His ship, the ESC Defiance, was the newest and most powerful vessel in Earth's fleet. It was also completely invisible to hegemony sensors. Stealth systems holding, his weapons officer reported. They still don't know we're here. Rick smiled. The Defiance was painted black and covered with materials that absorbed scanner beams. To alien sensors, it looked like just another asteroid. Target the command ship, Rick ordered. Load railgun with tungsten penetrators. The railgun was humanity's answer to energy shields. While other species used plasma and lasers, humans used simple physics. A piece of metal moving at near light speed could punch through any barrier ever built. Target locked, the gunner said. Fire. The tungsten rod shot out of the railgun with no flash or sound. It crossed the distance to the Yaoi hegemony command ship in 3 seconds. The alien shields tried to stop it and failed completely. The rod punched through the ship's hull like it was made of paper. The command ship exploded in a ball of fire and twisted metal. Colonel Danny Foster stood in the control room of Mars Base Alpha. Through the reinforced windows, he could see the red surface of Mars stretching to the horizon. Above him, the battle raged in space. Sir, his sergeant said, the hegemony fleet is breaking formation. Some ships are trying to retreat. Danny nodded. That was expected. The aliens had never faced real resistance before. When their perfect plan failed, they would panic. Activate the orbital defense grid, Danny ordered. All across Mars, hidden weapon systems came online. They had been built into the planet's surface over 10 years, disguised as mining equipment and research stations. The hegemony had no idea they existed. Giant railguns rose from concealed bunkers. Missile launchers opened like metal flowers. Energy cannons that humans had stolen and improved from captured alien technology began charging up. Pick your targets, Danny said. Fire at will. Mars turned into a fortress. Hundreds of weapons fired at once, reaching up into space to hit the confused alien ships. The hegemony vessels were caught completely off guard. They had expected to fight human ships in space, not an entire planet armed for war. Dr. Susan Clark sat in a communications center deep under Earth's surface. Around her, dozens of screens showed alien news broadcasts from across the galaxy. Her job was not to fight the war, but to win the peace that would come after. Broadcasting on all alien frequencies, her assistant said. Susan nodded and began to speak. Her words were translated into thousands of alien languages and sent across the galaxy. People of the galaxy, she said, you have been told that the hegemony protects you. You have been told that they keep the peace. Today, you can see the truth. The hegemony maintains control through fear and lies. The broadcast showed video from the battle. Hegemony ships firing on tiny human fighters. The proud alien fleet being torn apart by weapons they had never imagined. Humans fight for freedom, Susan continued. We fight for the right to choose our own path. We fight so that no one can force us to kneel. If you are tired of bowing to masters who care nothing for your lives, now is the time to stand up. Back in space, the battle was turning into a disaster for the hegemony. Half their fleet was destroyed or damaged. The survivors were trying to retreat, but human ships were hunting them down. Admiral Jake Peterson watched the tactical display from Earth Command. Green dots chased red dots across the solar system. For the first time in galactic history, the hegemony was losing a battle. "Sir," his aide said, "we're receiving surrender requests from 12 hegemony ships." "No surrender," Jake said firmly. "If they want to live, they can run home and tell their masters what happened here. Let them spread the word that humans don't negotiate with bullies." Emma Parker flew her damaged fighter back toward Earth. 3 of her engines were dead and her cockpit was full of smoke, but she was alive. Behind her, the hegemony fleet was in full retreat. "Dragon 1 to Earth Command," she said. "Mission accomplished. The big bad fleet doesn't look so scary when it's running away." But even as the human forces celebrated their victory, long-range sensors were picking up new signals. More hegemony fleets were coming from deeper in the galaxy. Bigger fleets. The first battle was over, but the real war was just beginning. On 1,000 worlds across the galaxy, alien populations had watched the broadcasts. They had seen the mighty hegemony fleet broken by a small human force. For the first time in centuries, some of them began to wonder if freedom was possible. The rebellion had begun. Ambassador Tony Rivers met the Zephyrian leader in a dark cave on the planet Kepler 442. The cave was cold and wet, but it was the only place they could talk without the hegemony listening. "Your people destroyed the first fleet," the Zephyrian said. His bug-like voice clicked with excitement. "For 300 years we have not dared to dream of such a thing." Tony nodded. 3 weeks had passed since the battle at Earth. News of humanity's victory had spread across the galaxy faster than any ship could travel. On 100 worlds, people were whispering about the species that had said no to the hegemony and lived to tell about it. "We didn't do it alone," Tony said. "And we can't finish this alone either. We need allies." The Zephyrian's compound eyes glittered in the cave's dim light. "The hegemony has ruled us for so long. They control our ships, our weapons, our communications. How can we fight them?" "The same way we did," Tony replied, "by refusing to be afraid, by remembering that freedom is worth the risk." Captain Julie Adams stood on the bridge of her ship, the ESC Liberty. Around her, the strangest fleet in galactic history was gathering. Human destroyers flew alongside Zephyrian stealth ships. Altarian crystal vessels moved in formation with Earth's newest fighters. It was the first mixed-species rebel fleet anyone had ever seen. "Captain," her communications officer said, "we're getting reports from 17 more worlds. They want to join the resistance." Julie smiled. The hegemony had made a mistake when they tried to crush humanity. They had shown the galaxy that the great and powerful rulers could be beaten. Now everyone wanted to try. "Tell them we'll send training teams," Julie said. "But remind them that this won't be easy. The hegemony is going to hit back hard." Dr. Nathan Cross worked in a captured hegemony ship that had surrendered after the first battle. The alien technology was amazing, but it had one big weakness. It was designed by people who never expected anyone to fight back. "Look at this," Nathan told his team. "Their shield generators are incredibly powerful, but they all use the same frequency. If we can build a weapon that matches that frequency, we can punch right through." His assistant, Dr. Paul Martinez, studied the alien computer systems. "It's the same with their communications," Paul said. "They use quantum encryption, but it's the same code for every ship. If we crack it once, we can listen to all of them." Nathan nodded. The hegemony's greatest strength was also their greatest weakness. They had controlled the galaxy for so long that they had gotten lazy. They never thought anyone would be smart enough or brave enough to turn their own technology against them. Commander Linda Hayes sat in a hidden base on the moon. Her job was to gather intelligence from across the galaxy. What she was learning changed everything she thought she knew about the hegemony. "Ma'am," her analyst said, "you need to see this. We've been tracking hegemony fleet movements for the past month. Something doesn't add up." Linda looked at the star maps. Red dots showed hegemony positions across dozens of systems. But there were gaps. Big gaps. "They don't have as many ships as they claim," Linda said. "That's not all," the analyst continued. "We've been listening to their communications. Half their fleets are made up of ships from conquered species, ships they've forced to fight for them." Linda felt excitement building in her chest. The hegemony wasn't the ancient, unbeatable empire they pretended to be. They were bullies who had gotten fat and lazy from picking on people who couldn't fight back. Get this information to all resistance cells, Linda ordered. Let everyone know that the Emperor has no clothes. On the planet Altair Prime, the crystal beings that lived there were having their first free election in 400 years. The hegemony governor had fled when news of Earth's victory reached the system. Now the Altarians were choosing their own leaders for the first time in centuries. Similar scenes were playing out across the galaxy. On some worlds, the rebellions were peaceful. Populations simply refused to obey hegemony orders. On other worlds, fighting broke out as local hegemony forces tried to maintain control. The galaxy was waking up, and it was angry. Captain Maya Rodriguez flew her scout ship through the outer edges of the hegemony core systems. She was gathering intelligence for the Resistance's next major operation. What she found surprised her. The hegemony's homeworlds were heavily defended, but most of the defenses were automated. There weren't many actual hegemony citizens living there. The population centers were smaller than Earth's major cities. They're not a huge empire, Maya reported back to Earth. They're a small group that's been pretending to be huge for so long that everyone believed it. Back on Earth, Admiral Jake Peterson studied the intelligence reports with growing excitement. The hegemony was powerful, but they were also spread thin across the galaxy. If enough worlds rebelled at the same time, the hegemony wouldn't have enough forces to stop them all. It's like a house of cards, Jake told his staff. It looks impressive, until someone pushes it, then the whole thing falls down. Dr. Susan Clark's propaganda broadcasts were reaching more worlds every day. Her team had learned to hack into hegemony communication networks, spreading messages of hope and rebellion across the galaxy. People of the galaxy, she broadcast, the hegemony tells you that resistance is impossible. They told humans the same thing. Today, human children play in the ruins of hegemony warships. Today, human farmers grow crops in soil fertilized by the ashes of hegemony tyranny. The message was simple but powerful. If humans could do it, anyone could do it. Tony Rivers received a coded message while he was meeting with resistance leaders on New Centauri. The message was from Ambassador Helen Carter, who was still traveling between worlds building the alliance that would challenge the hegemony. The big fish are biting, Helen's message said. 3 core worlds have agreed to join us. When they flip, the whole hegemony power structure will collapse. Tony smiled. Core worlds were the oldest and most important planets in hegemony space. If they joined the rebellion, it would prove that even the hegemony's most loyal supporters had had enough. But the hegemony was not going to give up without a fight. Their response to the growing rebellion was swift and brutal. They began bombing rebel worlds from orbit, destroying entire cities to make examples. The message was clear: submit or die. Julie Adams watched the reports of the orbital bombardments with cold anger. The hegemony was showing their true face at last. They weren't protectors or peacekeepers. They were destroyers who would rather rule over ashes than lose control. Send a message to all resistance forces, Julie ordered. Tell them the time for hiding is over. The hegemony wants a war. Let's give them one they'll never forget. Across the galaxy, rebel fleets began moving toward their targets. The final confrontation was coming, and this time it wouldn't be just humans fighting for freedom. It would be dozens of species, united by one simple idea. No one had the right to rule over anyone else without their consent. The rebellion had become a revolution. President Jack Morrison stood before the cameras in the White House. Behind him, Earth's blue sky looked peaceful, but above that sky, the biggest war in galactic history was about to begin. My fellow humans, Jack said, and to all free beings across the galaxy who can hear this message. Today the hegemony has given us their final ultimatum: surrender, or they will destroy Earth and every world that stands with us. Jack paused and looked directly into the camera. His voice was calm but firm. Our answer is the same as it has always been. No. We will not kneel, we will not surrender, and we will not be the last to stand free. Admiral Karen Russell commanded, the largest fleet of free ships ever assembled. 500 vessels from 47 different worlds hung in space around Earth. Human destroyers flew alongside Zephyrian stealth ships. Altarian crystal vessels moved with Centaurian battle cruisers. It was beautiful and terrifying at the same time. "Ma'am," her communications officer said, "the Hegemony Grand Fleet is dropping out of hyperspace. Sector 7, bearing 270. Karen looked at her tactical display. 8,000 ships appeared on the screen. The Hegemony had brought everything they had for this final battle. "Signal all ships," Karen ordered. "This is it. Today we decide if the galaxy stays free or goes back. To sleep, make it count." Dr. Paul Martinez worked frantically in his laboratory beneath Luna Base. The virus he had created was ready, but using it would change everything. It wasn't designed to kill anyone. It was designed to free them. "Are you sure about this?" his assistant asked. Paul nodded. "The virus will shut down all Hegemony control systems. Every slave ship they're forcing to fight for them will suddenly be free to choose. Every communication network they use to spread fear will go silent." Paul looked at the small data disk that contained his life's work. "It's not a weapon of war, it's a weapon of liberation." Captain Steve Johnson flew his fighter toward the heart of the Hegemony fleet. Around him, the largest space battle in history raged across 3 star systems. Ships exploded like fireworks. Plasma beams lit up the darkness. Debris from destroyed vessels created new asteroid fields. "Blue Squadron, this is Blue Leader," Steve said into his radio. "I'm beginning my attack run on the command ship." The Hegemony command vessel was the size of a small moon. It bristled with weapons and was surrounded by a protective screen of smaller ships. Getting close enough to deliver Paul's virus would be suicide. Steve had volunteered anyway. He dove through the defensive screen, dodging plasma bolts and missile explosions. His fighter's hull glowed red from heat damage. Warning alarms screamed in his cockpit. "Almost there," Steve whispered to himself. Julie Adams watched Steve's attack run from her command ship. She wanted to order him back, but she knew this was their only chance. If the virus could reach the Hegemony's central computer, it would spread through their entire network in minutes. "All ships, cover Blue Leader," Julie ordered. "Give him everything we've got." The entire Free Fleet focused their fire on the Hegemony defenses. Ships that had been enemies for centuries worked together to protect one human pilot carrying hope in a computer disk. Steve's fighter broke through the last defensive line. The Hegemony command ship loomed in front of him like a metal mountain. He could see weapon ports opening, ready to blow him into dust. He fired his missiles at the ship's communication array and flew straight into the explosion. His fighter was destroyed instantly, but the virus disk made it through the breach in the hull. Paul's virus spread through the Hegemony network like wildfire. Control systems shut down across the galaxy. Slave ships suddenly found their crews free to make their own choices. Communication networks went silent. And then something amazing happened. The Hegemony slave ships began turning their guns on their masters. Crews that had been forced to fight for the Hegemony were finally free to fight for themselves. The 8,000 ship fleet began tearing itself apart from the inside. On the bridge of the Hegemony flagship, High Counselor Zeth Ka watched his empire collapse in real time. Ships were defecting by the hundreds. His own crew was looking at him with hatred instead of fear. "How is this possible?" Zeth Ka demanded. His science officer, a being from a world the Hegemony had conquered long ago, smiled for the first time in decades. "The humans taught us something," the officer said. "They taught us that saying no is always an option. The battle was over within hours. The Hegemony fleet was destroyed or scattered. The few ships that tried to run were hunted down by crews that had spent lifetimes dreaming of revenge." Zeth Ka's flagship was surrounded by free vessels. He received a communication request from Admiral Karen Russell. "This is Admiral Russell, of the Free Alliance Fleet," Karen said when the connection opened. "High Counselor Zeth Ka, you are under arrest for crimes against the galaxy. Surrender your vessel." Zeth Ka looked around his bridge. His crew had already laid down their weapons. He was alone. "I demand to know by what authority you arrest me," Zeth Ka said. Karen smiled. "By the authority of every free being in the galaxy. By the authority of choice over force. By the authority of people who refuse to bow." 6 months later, Ambassador Helen Carter stood before the first session of the new Galactic Federation. The chamber looked much like the old Galactic Council, but everything felt different. Representatives sat as equals. No one bowed to anyone else. When the hegemony demanded we kneel, we stood, Helen said to the assembled delegates. When they demanded silence, we roared. When they demanded obedience, we chose freedom. That choice changed everything. She looked out at the faces watching her. Humans sat next to Zephyrians. Altarians worked with Centaurians. Former enemies were becoming friends. The old empire was built on fear. Helen continued. This new federation is built on hope. Fear makes people small. Hope makes them strong. Dr. Susan Clark watched the ceremony from Earth. Her broadcasts had helped spread the revolution across the galaxy. Now she was working on something even more important, making sure it never happened again. The price of freedom, she said to her team, is eternal vigilance. We must never forget what happens when good people do nothing. Tony Rivers opened the first interspecies cultural exchange center on New Geneva. Former hegemony worlds were learning what it meant to govern themselves. It wasn't easy, but it was better than being slaves. Freedom is messy, Tony told a group of young aliens who were visiting Earth for the first time. Democracy is loud and chaotic and sometimes frustrating, but it's better than silence. President Jack Morrison signed the Galactic Freedom Charter in a ceremony broadcast across the galaxy. The document established basic rights for all sentient beings and created a system where no single group could dominate the others. Today we prove that tyranny is not inevitable, Jack said. We prove that freedom is possible for anyone brave enough to reach for it. On Earth, children played in parks where monuments to the war stood as reminders. The monuments didn't celebrate victory. They celebrated the courage to say no when saying no seemed impossible. The galaxy was free, and it would stay free as long as people remembered the lesson humanity had taught them. Sometimes the most powerful word in any language is no.